everybody, welcome back to video 2 of the day. Our favorite person, Jen McCabe. This is going to be a long one. Hopefully we can get through it. We're in the middle of a thunderstorm again, so hopefully that won't cause any problems. All the dogs are now in the house, as is my husband, so if you hear any background noise like right now, I can hear in my headphones my dog Shiloh panting really hard because she was outside tracking something and just ran in because it started raining. So apologies for that if you hear it. Welcome to all the new subscribers. If you aren't subscribed, get subscribed. Give this a like on your way in or on your way out. It's completely free to do that, and it really helps the channel get their videos out into the algorithm. So like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you'll know every time I upload a new video. And I guess we might as well just jump right in with Jen McCabe. All through the trial, I kept hearing Jen McCabe, Jen McCabe, Jen McCabe. Everybody seems to have a connection with her. They know her. They're related to her. They're friends with her. She coached their kid, something. Everybody seems, it always comes back to Jen McCabe. That's what I've been saying all along. She's the one person in this trial that damn near everybody has mentioned. It's bizarre. So I didn't really know what to expect when she took the stand, but wow. She's a lot. She is a lot, a whole lot. So this is Jen McCabe. She has lived in Canton for her whole life. She's Matt McCabe's wife, who we just discussed in the last video, and Allie McCabe's mom. Allie is the one that gave Colin a ride that night. She is a homemaker. She has 4 daughters, and she knew John O'Keefe for 10 years. So on the fateful night of January 28th, she says that she set up for her daughter Allie's team dinner at her house and then met up with parents of the Canton High School basketball team. They had a drink and appetizers, and her younger 2 daughters were with them, and they fed them dinner. She went to the basketball game at Canton High School, then met her sister Nicole Albert at the waterfall at 9 p.m. with her husband Matt. They drove there in her Yukon Denali. She says her cell phone was not connected to the Bluetooth in the car. Matt said it was. Just thought I'd point that out. Nicole Albert, Chris Albert, Julie Albert, Caitlin Albert, and Tristan Morris were all at the waterfall when they got there. The Colakeithuses joined them. Brian Albert and Brian Higgins arrived. Then Karen Reed and John O'Keefe arrived. And Tristan Morris left to sleep because he had to plow. She said that she had known John O'Keefe for 10 years. John's sister and husband lived in their neighborhood. So as you remember, John's sister passed away, and then a couple months later, her husband passed away, and then John moved into their house to begin caring for their 2 children. Her daughter became friends with John's niece in kindergarten. John's sister and brother-in-law passed away that year. John moved in and took care of the kids. She says John was her friend. She loved John, and he was an amazing guy. She met Karen Reed in July of 2020. She says that she enjoyed her. She really liked her. She thought they connected from the beginning. She was easy to talk to. They both had MS, and it was nice to have someone who understood what she was going through. She says that she talked to John O'Keefe about his relationship with Karen Reed occasionally, and the same with Karen Reed. They would occasionally talk about her relationship with John. She was at the waterfall from 9 p.m. until midnight. John and Karen came in at about 11 o'clock. She says Karen brought a glass with her and took it out of her coat and left. The glass had ridges in it. Now, why I included that is because she remembers that detail. But as we go through her testimony, she as everybody else in this case, doesn't recall, doesn't remember a lot of things, but she remembers that the glass that Karen brought in with her had ridges on it, and there was clear liquid in it. She talked to John about Kaylee getting into Bishop Fian. She talked to Karen, and she said she was frustrated because she had taken Kaylee to Duncan, and John was saying, don't take her, she'll come to expect it every day. Which kind of checks with what we've heard, that, you know, John didn't want her spoiling the kids, etc. She talked to Karen about how challenging it is with kids. Karen said that that's all her and John ever fought about. Jen McCabe said, yeah, welcome to parenthood. Karen was frustrated and felt like the family, John's family, needed to be doing more to help. She wished they had more time that was just her and John. And Jen says it was just girlfriend to girlfriend kind of venting. Now, no one else had anything to say that wasn't really glowing about the two of them that night. You know, we've heard she was singing John's praises. She was complimentary to him. They were lovey-dovey. You know, all of these things. She's the first person that said, you know, that Karen was frustrated with the situation. So she says Karen asked Chris Albert if they could go to D&E. She wanted him to cook some food and says that she brought it up many times. Just like in the last video, I'll say, I don't know why we need to know, because she asked many times. Maybe she was just craving some pizza, she was hungry, whatever, but he always asks and they always tell him. She said it more than once, or she said it many times. Brian Albert, Chris Albert, and Matt McCabe do an annual weight loss challenge. So they said, no, we can't go. We're not going to eat. We'll do it another time. She had gone to the waterfall to meet Nicole Albert and have a drink for Brian Jr.'s birthday. But Brian Jr. didn't come because, as we know from that video, he suffers from anxiety and decided to stay home. She says Brian Albert made a general statement. Hey, we're going home to have a drink with Brian Jr. if anybody would like to come, to everyone. Nicole testified that she only said that to Jen McCabe. But again, this is Brian, apparently, that's making this statement to everyone. She told John and Karen that they should come by, and they both wanted to. She walked out of the waterfall with Karen and Karina Kolakithis. She told Karen to ride with her and that they would meet Matt and John there. John came out and they had a conversation about them coming to Fairview. John and Karen walked to Washington Street. Jen got in her car in the waterfall parking lot and waited for Matt to come out. If you remember, Matt and Nick Kolakithis were the last two to leave because they stayed behind to help clean up and talk to the band. She got a text from John saying where to. She was driving, so she called him on the Bluetooth through her car, which she said wasn't hooked up, but let's go on. And she gave him directions and the address. John called back and she told him it was by a friend's house. She said, go past Bella's Street and it's at the bottom of the hill. She's known Brian Albert since she was in kindergarten. Brian Albert and Nicole dated for 10 years before getting married. So here's the family tie connection. Brian is married to her sister, Nicole Albert. So we've got Brian, Nicole, and Jen in the pictures. She told John to go to Chapman. Waterfall to Fairview is a 5+ minute drive. There are 2 hills on Fairview. The time between the first and second calls with John was about 4 to 5 minutes, and John didn't say who he was with. She says that John and Bella's mom had dated briefly years before. She parked in the driveway. There was a car in front of her and maybe a car to the left. She walked in. Caitlin Albert, Brian Jr., Julie Nagel, and Sarah Levinson were all sitting at the kitchen table. She said Nicole was in the kitchen wiping counters. Brian Albert and Brian Higgins were in the TV room talking, and that she sat at the table most of the night. Okay, so here we have some more crazy connections. So Colin Albert is a friend, Julie Albert's son, and her sister Nicole's nephew. Colin and Allie were born a week or two apart and are very good friends. She says that she didn't see Colin or Allie's car at 34 Fairview. So what this is showing you is Jen is Allie's mom. Allie and Colin are friends, and Allie is also Allie the alibi McCabe because she gave Colin a ride that night. Nicole Albert is Jen McCabe's sister. She is Allie's aunt and Colin's aunt, and she's sister-in-law with Julie Albert because Julie's married to Chris, who's Brian's brother, and Julie and Jen are friends. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you can follow all of this. This is why I said she's the epicenter of the bullshit, because all these connections. So she says that John O'Keefe never came inside. She was at 34 Fairview until 1:30 to 1:45 a.m. and she got there at 12:20 a.m. The last call from John was at 12:18 a.m. She says that Julie Nagel went outside. No one went upstairs or to the basement, and she doesn't recall charging her phone. She says that she charged it in the car on the way there. But if you remember, Sarah Levinson said that Jen had her phone plugged in behind her at the table, and it was on the floor, and that Jen was coming back, and she was like checking it repeatedly, and that at one point she had talked to someone, said somebody was coming, and things like that. But she says that she did not charge her phone, that she charged it in the car. She was familiar with who Sarah Levinson was. Julie Nagel was closer to Brian Jr., so she knew her a little better, and she is dog sat for Jen and Matt when Brian Jr. wasn't available. She said that she had met Brian Higgins a few times, and he was Brian Albert's friend. She says that Julie Nagel went outside. Her brother had come to pick her up, and she was out there for a few minutes. Brian Jr. said there was another car out there. So she went to the front door. She said the door was open, the storm door was closed, so she's looking out the open door through the storm door. She saw a dark SUV. She texted John here, she thinks, at 12:27 a.m. The SUV was straight ahead of her. She saw the headlights off to the left side, which would, I guess, be Ricky's F-150 that Ryan Nagel was in. She says that she didn't recognize the SUV. She was familiar with John and Karen's vehicles, but that the SUV was consistent with Karen Reed's Lexus SUV. She didn't see anyone get out. The SUV was running. She said that she saw the red taillights and headlights, but she didn't see any interior light on. She said the car moved, so she texted John, pull behind me. At 12:40 a.m., she texted John, hello. She can't be certain if the SUV was still out front or if it had left at that point. At 12:42 a.m., she texted John, where are you? And at 12:45 a.m., she texted John, hello. At 4:59 a.m., she texted John, Karen is worried, we need to find you. And at 5:04 a.m., she texted John, please respond so I know you're okay. She says that she didn't see anyone get out of the SUV. John didn't come in the house. John didn't respond to the text, and John did not call her. Call records show that she called John at 12:14 a.m., and he called her at 12:18 a.m. The last call was from her to John at 5:25 a.m. She says that she thought John and Karen decided not to come in, that maybe they had had an argument, or his niece Kaylee called and needed them to come home. She left at 1:30 to 1:45 a.m. with Matt, Julie Nagel, and Sarah Levinson. Matt was driving. She was in the passenger seat. Julie and Sarah were in the back. When they were driving by the house, she was turned, talking to the girls with her back to the window. They dropped Julie Nagel off and then Sarah Levinson, and then they went home. It took about 20 to 30 minutes to get from Fairview, dropping off the girls, to their house. They got home after 2 a.m. She says they went up to bed. She asked Matt to watch a show. He said no, and he went to sleep. She got on her phone. She says that she was researching a basketball team. She texted her sisters and texted a group chat that included her husband, who's laying next to her asleep, and one other person. And remember, this is all after 2 a.m. She says that she had played It's Raining Men video at Fairview at the table, which Matt told us about as well. She had an iPhone and an Apple Watch, but she's not sure if she was wearing it that night. Call records show that she was making calls to John O'Keefe at the time of seeing the SUV outside, but she doesn't recall making them. She woke up to her phone ringing at 4:53 a.m. Kaylee was calling. Kaylee said John didn't come home and Karen wanted to talk to her. Karen was screaming in the background, "Jen, Jen," and I have a video I can play of that. Now, she at first was saying it really loud. I'm not going to play you that one because it annoyed me so bad. So I have a different version, but apparently this is how Karen was screaming. Jen, Jen. Yeah. So Karen is screaming that on the phone multiple times and says John didn't come home. She says that Karen and John got in a fight and she left him at the waterfall. Jen was confused. Karen kept screaming her name over and over. Jen remembers that Chris Albert was at the bar, so she thought maybe John walked home with Chris because he lives so close by. And then she tells Karen she's going to call Julie and ask if John had ended up with Chris, but Julie didn't answer. So let's just take a quick timeout, a quick pause. She walked out with Karen and Karina at the waterfall. She talked to John twice regarding where they were going and how to get there. But suddenly she thinks, oh, maybe he went with Chris from the waterfall when she saw him leaving or heading towards Karen's SUV with her. But let's continue. Matt says, hey, what's going on? She tells him what Karen said about the fight. He says, what are you talking about? We saw them there outside of your sister's house. For whatever reason, though, I guess she didn't remember that until Matt brought it up. She didn't have Karen's contact information prior to that, so she got in touch with Karen again through Kaylee. Jen says, Karen, we saw you outside of my sister's house. Karen said she didn't remember going there and then started yelling, Jen, Jen, and saying, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And said she had a cracked taillight. Jen says she thought Karen was talking crazy. Karen said, oh my God, I left him there. Extremely irrational, according to Jen. Karen said again they had gotten into a fight. Jen says Karen was all over the place, hard to understand, and, of course, screaming. Jen thought maybe John ended up with Tom Beatty. He lives close to Fairview. His daughters are the same age as Jen's daughter. So she called Tom. Of course, Tom didn't answer. She called John, and Matt was calling John too. Hang on, I'm trying to catch up in my notes here so I don't miss anything. All right. So she thought that she would drive over to Tom Beatty's and maybe John would be there, passed out on the couch or whatever. She went downstairs to make coffee, as you do when somebody's missing, and hears screaming out front. She ran to her front door. Karen came running up her walkway. Karen was loudly screaming, Jen, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And we have to go to Fairview. Karen's vehicle was in the driveway with the driver's side door open, and she told Matt that she was going with Karen. She says a car and a plow pulled up. Carrie Roberts was in the car. Carrie rolled down the window and yelled, Karen, what are you doing? Jen told Karen she was going to drive her car, Karen's car, because Karen was hysterical. Her and Karen got in Karen's car and Carrie called Karen. Karen was screaming, saying she cracked her taillight and we need to go to Fairview. Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? And screaming their names. Carrie, Jen. Carrie told Karen to shut up and that she needed to go back to John's and they'd all drive in one car. She said, maybe John is passed out there and you didn't see him. It's odd, but I guess it was a possibility. Jen drove Karen's car to John's Meadow Avenue residence. Jen had met Carrie once before. She said John took her and Carrie to Reebok because he had a discount and he bought sneakers for all of her girls and her. Then they went to the hillside for lunch to thank him for helping. Karen's phone is paired with her vehicle. They backed out of the driveway, but Jen doesn't remember if there was a backup camera. It was a 5 to 6 minute drive to John's house. They all pull in the driveway. Carrie parks behind them. Karen says, look, see, I have a cracked taillight. It was the passenger side right rear. Jen says that she saw the missing pieces and the snow covering it. Jen says Karen is screaming, look. Carrie's screaming back at Karen. She said it was chaotic. They were in the driveway looking at the light, but not for long because Carrie was yelling at Karen, telling her she's crazy. Carrie says Karen was driving around drunk and she could have hit anything, and then Carrie rushes them into the house to look for John. Okay, so let's take a look at this.
Sir, the three of you get out of your respective vehicles. What happened?
Karen brings us to the back of the car and she says, look, see, I have a cracked taillight.
And where on the vehicle was she directing yourself and Miss Roberts' attentions?
The back right.
So passenger side, rear part of the vehicle.
Yes.
Okay, so that was her testimony. And as we're all very aware now, John has a Ring camera in the driveway. So let's take a look at what really happened when they got there.
Can we run this? Sorry.
Now, I don't know about you, but I don't see what she was talking about. So let's do this. Let's mute that one. Let's play them together, shall we?
Sir, the three of you get out of your respective vehicles. What happened?
Karen brings us to the back of the car and she says, look, see, I have a cracked taillight.
And where on the vehicle was she directing yourself and Miss Roberts' attentions?
The back right.
So passenger side, rear part of the vehicle.
Yes.
I don't know, guys. What do you think? Do you see what she was saying? Because I don't. At no point do I see Karen directing them to look at the back of her car. And before I muted this video, there's sound recording on the Ring as well. And I don't hear all the screaming back and forth. I just hear the wind and the snow. Just wanted to point that out for you so you can make your own decisions and judgments about her testimony. So she goes on and talks about how John was so meticulous, which we've heard from other witnesses, and that everything had its place, and that John was always watching the Ring app on his phone. They went in the right side garage door. It was open, and that's not normal. They entered the mudroom, and taking your shoes off was a well-known rule of John's. We've heard this from other witnesses as well. Jen and Carrie took off their shoes, but Karen just ran straight into the house, which, I mean, does that make you a murderer because you're in a panic because you can't find your boyfriend and you don't take off your shoes? I don't know, but apparently she thinks it's important enough that she needed to mention that Karen didn't take off her shoes. Anyway, Jen looked in the TV room, dining room, living room, and went upstairs and looked in John's room. She said Carrie was running around to different rooms, and then Jen went into Kaylee's room, and Karen wasn't doing the same thing as them. She said the bed was made in John's room. Jen talked to Kaylee for a few minutes. She says, I promised Kaylee that I'd find John and everything was going to be okay. The three of them got into Carrie's car and drove to Fairview. Carrie was driving, Jen was in the passenger seat, Karen was in the back. It was dark and it was hard to see out of the windows because of the snow. It was about a 10-minute drive. She said Karen was pushing up between them from the back, screaming, Carrie, Carrie, over and over, and Jen, Jen, over and over. Karen was repeating, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Carrie was yelling at Karen to shut up, sit back, buckle up, and look for John. Karen says, could he be home? Could he be walking home? Where is he? Jen was looking out the window for John, and apparently, I guess, Jen is just quiet. Like, when all this screaming is going on between Carrie and Karen, she doesn't say that she said anything. So I guess she's just quiet as a church mouse while all this chaos is going on. So Karen is continually screaming, and when they would get to certain, as she called them, landmarks, Karen would ask if he could be at certain people's houses, such as Bella. She asked, could he have been with Ashley, who's Bella's mom? Jen said no, that seemed like a crazy idea to her. Carrie said, could he have called someone that lived a street over, a woman that John had previously dated? Karen started screaming, who's that? Who's she? She said Karen was spiraling, yelling about Ashley, talking very irrationally about John maybe being with her. So again, like I talked about in my video before with Matt, I feel like the reason this is being brought up is the prosecution wants it to go towards motive. I really think that they're going to try to say, when they gave the directions to the house and they mentioned Bella, it triggered Karen. She got jealous, decided she was going to just back up over him and kill him and leave him for dead in the snow in a cop's front yard. I really feel like that's where the Commonwealth is going with all of that testimony. So they turned into Fairview from Chapman. Karen continuously screaming their names. Carrie screaming at Karen to sit back. They're coming down Fairview. They got to the trees by the house. The house was on the driver's side. They drove past the flagpole area, and Karen starts screaming, there he is, and banging on the door to get out. Jen says that she saw nothing. Carrie unlocked the door to let Karen out and said to Jen McCabe, she's crazy, she's batshit crazy. Karen ran straight to John, straddled him, lifted his shirt and her shirt, and laid down on top of him. Carrie went over and removed snow from John's face, and Jen called 911. Carrie was yelling for Jen to go to the car and get blankets. Jen couldn't believe that that was John. John was lying on his back, and his body was covered with snow. Jen brings blankets to Carrie. She said that Carrie lifted him up and put the blankets underneath him. Carrie is screaming at Karen to get off of John. Karen is screaming, is he dead? Is he dead? Carrie's yelling about doing CPR and tells Karen to do mouth to mouth. Then Karen starts yelling because blood starts coming out of John's mouth. After the 911 call, Carrie asked Jen to take over compressions. She says the police arrived first. It was Officer Seraph. Karen ran around screaming Jen and Carrie's names and is he dead? Is he dead? On repeat. Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? And if you listen to her testify, it sounds like everything Karen says, she says twice. I don't know if that's true or not, but everything she says, she repeats it. EMTs were working on John on the ground. Karen continues to run around screaming. One EMT asked for John's name, age, etc., and if Karen knew what happened. And then Karen stated 3 times that she hit him. I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. An officer put Karen in a cruiser and asked Jen to go over to her. Carrie was there too. Karen grabbed their hands and asked them to pray. Karen saw blood on her hands and asked them if she had gotten her period. They told her, no, it's John's blood. Karen said, what if he's dead? Promise me you'll take care of the kids. Someone's got to take care of the kids. And then they prayed. They were moving John, the EMTs were, and Karen tells Carrie to go and look at John, saying, is he dead? Times 3. So, is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? Over and over. So she either repeats it 2 or 3 times when she talks, apparently. Carrie goes to check on John. Karen's yelling, are they working on him? And then Karen grabs Jen McCabe's hands and says, Google hypothermia. Google how long it takes to die in the cold. Jen says she attempted to Google how long does it take to die in the cold sometime after 6 a.m. at the scene. She typed it multiple times and she says, it was freezing. She was screaming. My hands were shaking. I have MS. And she says that they didn't get an answer. Let me let her tell you this one. Let me find the video real quick. Here we go.
Working on him. And then at that point, she grabbed my hands and she said, Google hypothermia, Google how long it takes to die in the cold. And so I had my phone out and it was cold and my hands were frozen and I have MS, and I took my phone out while she was screaming and shaking my arm, and I attempted to Google how long does it take to die in the cold.
And when you conducted that search, that was at the defendant's request on scene sometime after 6 a.m. on that day, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall whether or not that came up as far as your search in Google? Is it something that you typed once or more than once? If you know?
I believe I did it multiple times because as I was typing it, I don't know what else was coming up. She was screaming. My hands were shaking.
And do you recall anything as far as what the search results were, or did you click on anything, or did you get an answer to the question the defendant had posed to you?
I don't even think I got an answer because as I kept Googling and she kept yelling, and then they were moving John, and the next thing I knew we were kind of moving because she wanted to see if they were working on him.
Okay. When she was giving that explanation, I've raised 3 kids. If you've been around kids, you know, like if they're in trouble and they're trying to make an excuse, they just keep like adding on and this and this and that was happening and this is why. And that's just what it reminded me of. Like, you know, it's going to come up later that, you know, she did the house or hose long to die in the cold. And she's already trying to make an excuse for why she typed it wrong. And like I said, you know, well, it was freezing. She was screaming. She was shaking my arm. My hands were shaking. I have MS. You know, just all the reasons, right? So she said they moved towards the ambulance to see what was going on. And after John was in the ambulance, different police officers were arriving, asking what happened. And Jen was in a state of shock and disbelief. She talked to a few officers. One officer asked her to go in the house and wake up her sister and brother-in-law. She called Nicole prior to going in the house. She had no conversations with Nicole or Brian Albert prior to going into the home. The front door was unlocked. She went up to the bedroom and the door was closed. She opened the door. Notice she didn't say I burst in. Nicole and Brian were sleeping. She doesn't know if Chloe was in the room. She goes over to the bed, calling out their names. Brian was startled. Nicole woke up after Brian. She told them, "We just found John out front." They were confused. Brian said, "Who's John?" They were shocked, confused, and not understanding. She said they had a few-minute conversation and they went downstairs. The police were at the bottom of the stairs. It was Officer Lank. He was already in the house, apparently. And she said that she knew Lank growing up. He's 5 years older than her. She says Karen was in a car and Carrie was walking all around. The ambulance had left when she went into the house. She had a conversation with Lank in the hallway into the kitchen. Brian and Nicole Albert and Jen had a few-minute conversation with Lank. Matt McCabe arrived while Lank was still there. She had called Matt when she was walking into the house. Lank told her to stay, that state police would be coming to talk to her. And then she says Karen and Carrie left in Carrie's car, then came back 5 minutes later, but she didn't see Carrie pull up. So I don't know how she knows that they came back. I'm guessing somebody told her.
Not what she told you. Next question, Mr. Miller.
At some point, did you see Ms. Roberts and the defendant go somewhere?
Yes, to pick up John's parents.
I'll strike that.
And as far as they left in Ms. Roberts' car, is that right?
Correct.
Ms. Roberts was again driving?
Correct.
And at some point, did you observe them come back to the house?
Yes.
And about how long was it between the time they left and the time they came back to the house?
5 minutes, approximately.
And after they came back to the house, what, if any, other activity did you see outside as far as first responders?
I was in the house, so I didn't see Miss Roberts pull back up.
You were in the house for most of the rest of the time that you were there, is that correct?
Correct.
So if you were in the house and you didn't see, how do you know? Somebody told her. That's the only thing that makes sense. So she says she was at Fairview until 11 or 11:30 a.m. Julie Albert arrived after the first responders were gone. Julie came in and they informed her of what had happened, and Julie was shocked. She said Lank came back with Gallagher because she called Lank. She had gotten his number from Julie. She told Lank about the comments and remarks that Karen had been stating that morning, and that Karen had told one of the EMTs that she hit him. She left with Matt and went home. Trooper Proctor was coming over to speak with them. She says that she had never met Proctor before. He had Yuri Buchanan with them. They got there pretty quick after Jen and Matt got there. Brian Albert came over. She asked him to come because she wanted his support, and he's like a big brother. Again, if you watched my video about Brian, to me it's a little weird. She was going home with her husband. If she needed support, why couldn't he support her? Why does she need her brother-in-law, who just happens to be a cop, there when she's being interviewed by the cops? I don't know. She talked to the troopers in the dining room. Brian Albert and Matt were in her bedroom. They talked to Brian and Matt too, but she was in her bedroom and couldn't hear. She's shown text and call records of her and Karen. She had texted Karen asking for Carrie's number. She called Karen while she was in the ambulance. She said Karen was repeating, "Is he dead?" and brought up the kids. She asked if Jen would visit her, and Jen said yes. She had no more communication with Karen Reed. She didn't get Carrie's information from Karen. She wanted Carrie's information because Carrie was on the way to bring John's parents to the hospital. She wanted to check on them, and she wanted updates about John. Now we get into cross, and as is with most witnesses, we find out a lot more through cross, it seems like, than we do on direct with Lally. This cross was done by Alan Jackson. So yeah, let's just dive into this. She says at the waterfall, she did not say, "You're coming with me," as Karina Kolakithis had testified. She says that she actually said, "Why don't you come with me?" to Karen, because John and Matt were still in the bar. She says, and she looks at the jury a lot when she says things, and she looked at the jury on this and says she was not trying to separate John and Karen. It was innocent. And that's kind of the way she moves her head. It was innocent. If I was a juror, I would be like really sketched out by her looking at me like that. Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Caitlin Albert, Julie Nagel, Sarah Levinson, and Brian Jr. were at 34 Fairview when she arrived with Matt. She says that she saw Brian Higgins' Jeep in front of the mailbox. The back of the Jeep was at the edge of the driveway. Matt put the Jeep in the exact same spot in his testimony, described it the exact same way, but she says it's not because she told him. She has shown Trooper Proctor's report from the January 29th interview. She says what's in the report she didn't say. So again, we have a trooper that is making mistakes in his report, apparently. How many times have we heard that from how many witnesses? She says what's in the report she didn't say. When Proctor asked her where the SUV was, she said by the driveway facing Chapman. She says Proctor Trooper, as she called him, misinterpreted what she said. She says that she 100% said it was straight out the front door. She never mentioned the Jeep to Trooper Proctor. She says she needs to see the report again. This woman needs to see everything, and I can only guess it's so she doesn't say something wrong, because she can't keep it straight what she said to who and when. But I've said it before. Mark Twain said it. The truth doesn't change. So if you're telling the truth, why do you have to constantly keep refreshing your memory of what you said? You'd say the same thing every single time. But she needs to see the report again. And according to the report, she placed the SUV in the exact spot where she said the Jeep was. She says, again, Trooper Proctor got it wrong. She says she was never asked about the Jeep. She has talked extensively with Chris and Julie Albert about the case because, quote, of the vicious harassment we are all receiving. Jackson points out that she's trying to get in additional information, but not answering his specific questions, and it's true. I've commented before how nobody can just say yes or no without like adding on and elaborating on things that don't have anything to do with the question. She's the queen of this. She is the queen. She will start talking about something that has nothing whatsoever to do with the question that was asked. So you have to go back and ask it again. She says they've talked about the details of that night, who was at the bar, the timing of the night, like when people came in and when people left. She's told friends and family her observations, and they've told her theirs. She said, we tried to figure out what happened to John, our friend. They haven't spoken extensively because speaking about it is very painful and difficult, but the harassment comes up every day. The facts of the case aren't spoken as much as the vicious harassment is spoken about. I mean, she really wants to drive home the harassment. Like, we know. She's told them her version of events, and they've told her their version of events. The extraction of her phone. This is where things start to get fun. So the extraction of her phone revealed data about Allie's whereabouts through the Life 360 app, which we discussed in the video about Allie. Jen testified at the state grand jury, and when Lally asked about Life 360, she answered very fluidly. At the grand jury, she said it's accurate and it works as a GPS to track everywhere you go. Of course, she asked to see the transcript. Jackson asked where Allie went after dropping off Colin. She says nowhere. Jackson asked if she checked Life 360, and she says at that point I had no reason to check her. No. Jackson asked if she's ever checked the app and saw that Allie was out driving until after 1:30 a.m. and she says no. She says she believed Allie when she said she came home, and she believed her when she said she picked Colin up, dropped him off, and came home. Okay, January 29th, 2022, after 6 a.m., she burst into the bedroom at Brian Albert and Nicole Albert's home. Alan Jackson asks, where was Chloe? And she says, I don't know. Jackson says, you were loud, hysterical, trying to wake them up, and a 70-pound German Shepherd didn't have any reaction. And she says, no. She doesn't remember the dog being there at all. She says that she has no memory of seeing it. So, hashtag, where was Chloe? She believes Caitlin left after they left. When she first saw the SUV outside, she didn't see Ryan Nagel's truck. She saw lights, and it was behind the SUV. So Jackson says, where was the Jeep? She testified previously that the Jeep was between Ryan and the SUV. She says she's not sure where Ryan's vehicle was, definitely not in front of the Jeep. It was behind it or to the side of it, and then she finally decides to say, okay, it was behind the SUV. At the state grand jury on my birthday, April 26th, 2022, she was asked about the arrival of Ryan Nagel's vehicle, and she stated that Ryan Nagel's vehicle arrived at 12:23 a.m. And I immediately said, wow, that's oddly specific. For someone that can't remember stuff, 12:23, she remembers that exactly. She asked to see the transcript, of course. At the grand jury, Lally asked what time the brother came, and she answered, I believe he was outside at 12:23 a.m. She says she was able to be specific about the time because she asked Julie Nagel for the text with her brother, and she was able to refresh her memory. I still find that so odd that she asked for those texts, but she did, and she got them. She also testified that as soon as she saw Karen Reed, she texted John, here. That text was sent at 12:27 a.m. Since Karen Reed arrived before Ryan Nagel, Karen and John had to have been out there for 4 or 5 minutes before Jen saw them. She says Ryan Nagel texted here at 12:23 a.m., then texted that he was going to leave. Now, my problem with that is no one else testified about that text. Julie and Ryan have both testified, and neither one of them said that he sent a text about leaving. He texted that he was here, and she went out. And then she says Julie went outside. Jackson says, that's not my question. And then she says, I'm explaining what happened in the 4 minutes. Okay, nobody asked you to do that, so why are you doing it? Jackson says Karen Reed's SUV was there at least 4 minutes before you noticed it, and she says, correct. Finally. Jackson says on Friday you indicated you saw some kind of tire tracks. She says she doesn't remember. Alan Jackson says, did you see any? And she says, at one point, yes, but I'm not sure when. And she believes it was after Karen's vehicle was there. She says the tracks were a wave, just like Matt testified, and they were not up to Karen Reed's car. She says, I saw the tire tracks because I was looking out at her car. I never said when I saw the tire tracks or where her car was when I saw the tire tracks. It doesn't have to be the first time I saw her car. I looked out multiple times. Jackson says, well, was it the second time? And she says, well, I'm not exactly sure. This woman, so frustrating. So she gave extensive testimony in front of the state grand jury, again, on my birthday, April 26th of 2022. She was asked about the location of Karen Reed's vehicle and where it was in relation to Ryan Nagel's vehicle. She asked, can I see it to refresh my memory? And says, I've had a few grand juries, so if you could show me what you're talking about, I'd greatly appreciate it. And Jackson shows her. Again, if you're telling the truth, wouldn't it be the same in every grand jury? I don't care if you've been to 15 or 50. It's going to be the same. But she needs to refresh her memory all the time. Jackson says at no point under oath at that grand jury did you testify about seeing a Jeep when asked to describe the vehicles out front. She argues back, I wasn't asked about any other vehicles out front. And I may not have been asked about the Jeep, so I didn't mention the Jeep. If somebody says, describe what vehicles were out front, if there was a Jeep out front, that's included and you're supposed to mention it. They don't have to say, was there a Jeep out front? No, they said, describe any other vehicles out front. Okay. Jackson says, between the date of the incident and now, have you ever had a conversation with Brian Higgins about where his Jeep was parked? And she says, no. Jackson says, did anyone tell you anything about Brian Higgins' Jeep and what he testified to? She says, no. And then he says, were you ever asked by anybody to make sure that you mention a Jeep parked behind Karen Reed's SUV in this trial? And she says, not that I recall, no. Okay, now we're going to get into some more fun stuff. So at 12:31 a.m., Jen texts John, pull behind me. At 12:40 a.m., she texts John, hello. At 12:42 a.m., she texts John, where are you? And at 12:45 a.m., she texts John, hello. She texted him a total of 5 times, including the initial 12:27 a.m. here text. For the first 2 texts, she says she was walking to the door and looking out. On June 8th of 2023, she testified at another hearing that she walked up to look and sat back down 5 times watching the SUV. She says, would you be able to show me that? And he shows her the transcript, and that is in fact what she said. She says that she got up a 6th time and checked and the SUV was gone. At 12:31 a.m., it had moved forward. She said that she saw it in 3 spots. It moved to the flagpole and then further up. She says she had a clear view outside and had a good, clear view of the SUV. The SUV was out there about 19 minutes. She looked at it every 3 to 3.5 minutes. She never heard any noise outside, squealing brakes, screaming or yelling, no loud voices or foul language, no door slam, no verbal arguments or revving of an engine, no collision or crash. She didn't see anything out of the ordinary, and she was looking over the lawn to see the SUV on the street. And then Jackson drops this one. I have a question, Miss McCabe. Where was the body? She says, I have no idea. I'm assuming the body was on the front lawn. And he says, the problem with that is you were looking at the body, weren't you? And she snaps back with, I was looking at the SUV. And then she's talking about how if she's looking at the SUV, she can't see what's in the yard. He's asking her, like, does she have problems with her vision? And saying, like, okay, if you're looking at me, like, in the face, if there was an alligator in front of me, do you think you'd see it? And then he says, when you looked out with that clear view of the SUV, there wasn't a body, was there? She says, I never saw a body. And then that magic quote that everybody likes to use, I wish I had. He says that sounds a little rehearsed, because it does, because everybody says it. And she says, it's not. She left at 1:45 a.m. She didn't see anything out of the ordinary outside. We talk about the peanut butter and jelly conversation again in the car with the girls. She says she never heard anyone say anything about seeing something outside out of the ordinary. She never heard Julie Nagel say she saw a black object in the yard. At John's house that morning, she saw the bed was made. But she was not aware that Karen Reed stayed on the couch that night waiting for John to come home. So apparently Karen was supposed to go back to her house in, I believe it's Mansfield. She was not supposed to stay the night that night, but she was sleeping on the couch because she was waiting for John to come home because his niece was home and she wasn't just going to leave Kaylee there by herself. So at the scene, she said Karen said, I hit him 3 times. Jackson hands her a copy of her grand jury testimony. She says that she reviewed it before testifying at my birthday 2022 grand jury. She never said Karen Reed said, I hit him 3 times. She says, and looking at the jury again, I can tell you with 100% clarity today that she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him that morning. She was asked no fewer than 12 times what Karen Reed said at the scene or on the way to the scene. And he goes through every single one. Every question asked, every answer she gave. I'm not going to do that. I have them written down, but this is going to be long enough as it is. He says, Mrs. McCabe, the truth is, you've manufactured the story for the jury because you think it helps you out. And she says, absolutely not. She called 911 at 6:04 a.m. and he plays a portion of the call. And when 911 asks how long he'd been out there, you hear her say, I don't know, he got out of the car. How does she know he got out of the car? She said she didn't see him. She didn't see anyone get out of the car. She says that's because Karen told her she left him there. I don't know if she really did. She says she left him at the waterfall. She says Nicole Albert didn't answer when she called her. Her phone extraction shows that the call was answered at 6:07 a.m. She says she didn't answer. Jackson plays audio and we hear these thumps. It's like thump, 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 thump. And we hear screaming and muffled voices. She says it's her voice, and this is actually the beginning of the 911 call. It's an open voicemail that was overhearing her 911 call. The thumps are the windshield wipers. The open voicemail is recording inside the SUV that she's sitting in, and it's 4 minutes long. The screaming is Karen Reed and Carrie Roberts. You can hear her trying to calm Karen down. She called Nicole at 6:07. It was a 7-second call. And at 6:08, she called her again, and it was an 8-second call. And she called Brian Albert at 6:23, but that one was not answered. This is all from her phone extraction. Her calls to Nicole Albert were deleted from her phone before turning it in to law enforcement. And she says, I never deleted any calls when I willingly handed my phone over. The calls are shown it's the Celebrate extraction report, and there's a deleted file, and all of those calls are shown in the deleted file. She randomly says, we're talking about phone extraction calls that had been deleted, and she's like, what seems to be forgotten is that my friend was lying there on the ground. And AJ is like, no, nobody's forgotten that. And he scolds her for editorializing her answers, which I was like, yes, but she doesn't stop. So regarding the Canton PD that showed up that day, she is friends with Lank. He's 5 years older than her, and she grew up with him. She knew of Sean Good. She knew Lank was good friends with the Albert family and had a long-standing friendship with Chris Albert, and Sarah has a sister that's the same age as her sister. She says while she was at the Alberts' house, she sat with her family in shock and horror. And I wish I could do the accent, but my daughter-in-law would probably kill me. But she's like, I was in shock and horror. Horror. They were allowed to discuss the events together without the police present. She was told later that Kevin Albert came over that morning after she left. And I don't think anyone else has mentioned this. I don't think it was asked about them or asked about him or any. I don't remember this at all. And I've watched every day. He said something to the effect of, and then another Albert came over and she said, oh, you're talking about Kevin Albert. And he's like, how did you know I meant Kevin Albert? Because there's like 5 brothers. And she said that, oh, somebody told me that Kevin came by. Nobody else, it hasn't been brought up with another witness, and nobody else has brought it up. So she said that she told Trooper Proctor on the 29th that the taillight had a crack in it. Trooper Proctor wrote in his report that she said, I saw a crack in it. She said it was cracked, and they have this whole argument about, it's all semantics, basically, you know, that I saw a crack, it was cracked. She's shown the picture of the SUV in the Sally port, the one with the light completely missing, and she says that's what it looked like when she saw it. There's no way. She told Brian Albert that Trooper Proctor was going to interview her, and he showed up before the trooper. She's shown call records. It's John O'Keefe's phone extraction. The time period she's shown is between 12:14 a.m. and 12:50 a.m. on January 29th of 2022. At 12:14, she calls John, it's answered. At 12:18, John calls her, and it's answered. Now, this is interesting. At 12:29 a.m., she called John, and it shows that it's answered. She says no, and the extraction status is unknown. So I'm hoping when the Celebrate people testify, they can explain that. But in total, there are 6 more calls between John and Jen, going all the way up to 12:50 a.m. She's shown her call records, the Celebrate extraction of her phone and her Apple ID that she turned in to law enforcement. At 12:14, or between 12:14 a.m. and 12:50 a.m., her phone shows no calls between her and John. But the 5:52 a.m. call to John is shown. So the calls shown on John's phone extraction are not shown on hers. Every call made to John between 12:14 and 12:50 was deleted and unrecovered. She turned her phone over on February 3rd, and that is plenty of time to delete calls. She says that she didn't delete personal text, or she did delete personal text with her daughters. She doesn't recall deleting phone calls with Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Chris Albert, Julie Albert, or Colin Albert. And then the group chat. So she's in this group chat with Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matt McCabe. On February 1st, 2022, at 2:15 p.m., Matt says, Julie said Channel 4 is in D&E, eating, I assume. Asked Chris to ask some questions, and then we got that awful line again. Tell them the guy never went into the house. Brian Albert responds, exactly. She says, John never went into the house. It isn't a story. It was the truth. It is the truth. Which is basically what Matt said. He's like, it isn't a story. It's a fact. She got Carrie Roberts' phone number on the 29th. She wanted to get in touch with her by the end of the day. She wanted to check on John's parents. She has John's mom's number. She wanted to see how Carrie was doing. She says she didn't try to influence Carrie's statements, And then we go to the group text from February 1st, 2022, and it's Jen McCabe sends, Carrie is here going over timeline. And then she adds on to that saying Carrie showed up at her house asking to sit down with her and go over the timeline so they'd remember everything that had happened. After creating the timeline, Carrie interviewed with the police. Jen acts like she doesn't know, and Jackson says, she did the interview in your living room, ma'am. She says, on Tuesday, 2 officers came and she sat in the other room and talked to them. They came to talk to Jen, and Carrie, once again, just happened to be there. The group text on February 1st at 2:55 p.m., Jen says, and handed the phone to Carrie. She's telling him everything. Everything is in all caps. All the stuff. So Jen basically is listening and she's reporting to the group and she says, I heard a statement that horrified me during the police interview on the phone. She said, Carrie is very blunt, not like me. She made a comment about John and Karen's relationship. Sorry, that was my dog. She made a comment about John and Karen's relationship and I was horrified. She says she was shocked and horrified by the way she said it. She says it's an opinion that she has of Miss Reed. Asked under oath a year ago what she was referring to, she said, I have no idea. Asked if she knew who she was referring to, she said, maybe Carrie, maybe I'm talking about Carrie. She was asked, you don't recall this text? And she said, I don't remember. But now she remembers that this comment Carrie Roberts made about Karen, and it was horrifying. Okay, more of the group text. Matt texts and says, Brian, sitting separate. Brian says, okay. And at 5:15, Jen texts, you listening? Cops here again. 5:23, Nicole says, call us after. Matt McCabe says, this girl could write a book nonstop. Jen says, I love it. She's telling them everything. And Nicole says, good. So why was it so important to report back to the group that you were happy Carrie was saying everything? She says, and here we go with her long answers. We had both lost our friend. Carrie was in shock as I was in shock. The two of us had all this info that just kept coming back to us, and it was terrifying. When you go through an experience and you're in shock, and Carrie was remembering things, I was remembering things, so I was happy for her that she was piecing it, and I had pieced it all together, because at the end of the day, our friend was dead, and we were trying to figure out what had happened to him together. There was no direction. We were all trying to figure out what had happened, because that's what you do when you lose somebody you love. January 29th in the group text, Jen says, Carrie talked to cops and kept it very simple. Nicole says, we'll get more info tomorrow. Don't want to text about it. And Jen responds, right. And she says that they decided that they would talk on the phone because their children look on their phones and they were working with the police. She was sharing information and everything that happened, and they didn't want it to leave their little circle because they were trying to figure out what happened, and they're not going to go running around letting people see it and say, oh my God, they think this might have happened or that might have happened. Carrie's daughter is very good friends with Michael Lank's daughter. On January 30th, on the way home from the O'Keefes, they dropped her off at Lank's house. Mike's wife and Carrie are friends. Lank's wife got in the car and consoled Carrie and asked, how the O'Keefes were doing. That has never been reported. She says that she never thought much of it. They could have been there an hour, she said, because Carrie is a talker. She's asked if she had any conversations before her testimony today about going to Lank's house on the 30th. She says yes, a couple of weeks ago at the DA's office. She says that she met with Lally, Miss McLaughlin, Steve Nelson, Trooper Brian Tully, and another woman from the DA's office that works with Steve Nelson, and her daughter Allie was also there. No one took notes. It was a casual meeting to explain the process because she's like, we've never been through this before. Man, you said you've been to all these grand juries. You've been through this. The meeting was not recorded. After 20 minutes, she says that they asked her to step out and they spoke with Allie. Then she went back in and they spoke to her for about 30 minutes to an hour. She asked what discovery had been turned in regarding her because she wanted to know what was coming. I thought that was odd. I can't imagine somebody being like, hey, what kind of discovery do you have on me? It was just a weird question. The day before, on the 29th, Nicole said, we'll get more info. Then on the next day, the 30th, she goes to Lank's house for 45 minutes. It's suspicious. Jackson asked what Lally showed her regarding the meeting at Lank's, and she says nothing. She says Brian Tully told her about it. He said, did you go to Michael Lank's on January 30th? And she says that at first she said, no, I've never been to his house. Then she thought about it and said, oh my God, yes, I did go there. And that was the end of the conversation. She says Tully didn't ask any follow-up questions. That was just it. She says to Alan Jackson, you're spinning all of this. Jackson says, I do a lot of things, but I don't spin. There's a judge here to make sure I don't spin. Jen says Lally wasn't there when she and Tully had that conversation. The same report that shows her at Lank's house shows her going by 34 Fairview and picking up Nicole Albert before going to Lank's. She says we did not pick up Nicole Albert and we did not stop by 34 Fairview. And then she gives this explanation. Maybe Carrie slowed down, but we did not stop by 34 Fairview. That's how we get to Michael Lank's house. So she has these calls with John O'Keefe on January 29th between 12:14 and 12:50. 12:14, answered. 12:18, answered. 12:29, not answered. 12:41, twice, not answered both times. 12:43, not answered. 12:46, not answered. 12:47, not answered. 12:50, not answered. And all of those calls are deleted from her phone. So he brings up a very good point that I was like, holy shit. If you misplace your phone, what's the first thing you do? You have someone call your phone. And he says over and over, maybe 5, 6, 7 times. Her explanation for all of those missed calls, according to her prior testimony, the missed calls were, say it together now, butt dials. She doesn't remember making them, so she assumes that she put her phone in her back pocket and that was it. Butt dials that are missed would go to voicemail, but John didn't have any voicemails. So 7 butt dials equals 14 interactions with the phone, to call and then to hang up. So that's 14 interactions with her phone in 19 minutes, and apparently it was all done with her butt. That's some talent. Okay. So I wanted to show you a few things. Hang on. I feel like there's more. There is more. Hold on one second. Alright, we're just gonna have to do this the hard way. Because it's important, so I want to get it all out here for you. And because I worked really hard. Let me see, is this it? Okay, so I need that one. Sorry, guys. Already long video, I know. Not sure why the whole presentation didn't load, so I apologize. Okay. I'm gonna make that smaller. Okay, let's close that. Okay, so on January 29th, she asked Officer Lank to come back to Fairview at 9 a.m. and Gallagher came with him. She didn't say, I hit him. She said, Karen Reed said, I hope I didn't hit him. She's shown the report from when Lank came back, and the report says, while driving around with Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts, she said something to the effect of, could I have hit him? She says that she told him, I hit him 3 times, and he should have asked first responders if they heard it. She says that she's been to Kevin Albert's house and Trooper Proctor's house in September of 2023. She says Elizabeth Proctor and I are 2 mothers who are being viciously terrorized and harassed by social media. Their lives have been torn apart, etc. 2 mothers trying to get through the unthinkable. She says it's a social media witch hunt and that she met with Elizabeth Proctor because she couldn't take the torture any longer. Okay then. And then, oh, go away. Now the key thing there is she's gone to their house, she says, September of 2023. And maybe that's the first time that she went to the house, but it's definitely not the first time that she met Proctor, because he interviewed her already on the 29th. Okay, sorry, this is a terrible video. Okay. So she had a conversation with Trooper Tully regarding her relationship with the Proctors, and he shows her the report. It's from like September, October of 2023. She's had multiple phone calls with Trooper Proctor since January 29th on and after, and he shows her the phone records. On January 29th at 10:55 a.m., Trooper Proctor called her for 1 minute and 17 seconds. At 12:49 p.m., Trooper Proctor calls her for 1 minute and 8 seconds. On the 30th, she calls Trooper Proctor at 9:51 a.m. for 4 seconds. It's a voicemail. At 9:52, she calls him back and they talk for 21 minutes and 31 seconds. 4:45 p.m., Trooper calls her and they talk for 9 minutes and 43 seconds. January 31st, 11:51 a.m., she calls Trooper Proctor for 2 minutes and 53 seconds. February 14th, they talk for 17 minutes. February 17th, 2 minutes. February 28th, 2 minutes and 1 minute. There were 2 calls. March 1st, they talked for 1 minute and 2 minutes on 2 calls. March 11th, they talked for 12 minutes. And March 29th, they talked for 4 minutes. And of course, she says that she doesn't recall the calls. That's a lot of talking, and you don't remember any of it. Any of it. All right, just a few more, guys. Bear with me. I apologize. All right. Come on. Ugh. Come on. Damn it. 54. Okay. In a September interview with Lieutenant Tully, she said that she never met Elizabeth or Michael Proctor prior to September of 2023. She says that she didn't say that. And I'm assuming it's because she realizes, oh shit, I said I didn't meet them until September, but I've actually met Proctor and been talking to him on the damn phone. So January 29th, she left Fairview between 1:30 and 1:45 a.m. She got home and she went upstairs, and the Celebrate data from her Apple Health shows that she walked upstairs. She was on her cell phone searching through Safari on the iPhone. She went to Google and she Googled Ozone basketball. Apparently her daughter was invited to join a team, and she said basketball was on her mind. Jackson says, if you wanted to know how long does it take for a human to die of hypothermia, what would you search? She refuses to say it. I mean, she absolutely refuses to say it. She knows what's coming, but she will not say it. HOS, Haas Long to die in cold, was searched at 2:27 a.m. She says Alan Jackson put it out on social media. He says he didn't. He's like, in fact, I don't even have social media. And then she says, okay, Turtle Boy put it out on social media. She will not say how long to die in cold. And then she asked Jackson, of course, to show her. You can't tell me she hasn't seen this a million times already. It's one of the key points in the trial is this damn search that she says that she did not make. Well, she says she made it, but not at 2:27 in the morning. She says she made it at the scene. So it was kind of good the way he did it. Like, you know, he brought up that, yeah, she agreed the Celebrate data was right, that it showed that she walked up the stairs and all that. But then she's going to dispute the Celebrate data when it says she made a search at 2:27 in the morning. So she later searched how long T.I. died in CIKD. On direct, she said it was at 6:23 a.m. and 6:24 a.m., 30 seconds apart. Jackson asked why two searches. Jen says she didn't make the search at 2:27 a.m. Jackson says that she searched again, hoping to overwrite the original search. So her thinking was, okay, I did this at 2:27. Now to cover my ass, I'm going to search for it again. And she's trying to make the same error in HOS instead of HOW. But instead of getting it right, this time she screws it up and says, how long T.I. die in CIKD. So she has to search again, obviously, for HOS long to die in the cold, because that's what she originally searched. And she's hoping by doing those searches, that cancels out the search from 2:27, but it didn't. Jackson says that she searched again, hoping to overwrite the original search. The 2:27 a.m. search is deleted. She says, I did not delete that search. And my thinking is, isn't it convenient that her husband works for an IT company? Because he damn sure would know how to delete it. If you're going to sit here and tell me that you don't know how to delete it, I guarantee you that your husband knows how to delete it. And if it's showing on the report that you did it at 2:27 and you deleted it, I'm apt to believe that you deleted it. Because you're telling me that all of this data is accurate about you, what time you got home and walking upstairs, the searches you made at the scene, all of that. But apparently at 2:27, it screwed up. It screwed up. It made a mistake. It didn't happen. She didn't search that then. So then we get back on redirect with Lally, and she says that she didn't see John O'Keefe that morning, but Karen Reed saw him from the car. So she's talking about when they went to search, and they're looking, that she didn't see anything. She said that she would have kept driving because she didn't see anything. But Karen saw him. She says the phone searches were for Ozone Basketball and Hakamak Sports. She left the tab open at 2 a.m. on those searches, and then she searched at the scene using the same tab at the scene. So now she's going to say, well, it was open at 2 and I used the same tab, so it must have just mistakenly thought for a second it was 2:27, and then I don't know. We find out that she used to teach 5th grade. I don't know why we needed to know that. Karen Reed said a plow hit John, and her story changed multiple times. The voicemail 911 was on Karen Reed's phone. She says the horrifying statement, the one that absolutely horrified her when she heard it come out of Carrie Roberts' mouth was, are you ready to be horrified? John really loved Amy. In my eyes, Karen Reed was just a babysitter with benefits. I mean, that really lowers the standard of what she considers horrifying, doesn't it? And then she goes on and on about the harassment, because she really wants that out there. She really needs that narrative out there. And I guess, you know, if we mention it 500 times versus 499, it'll get my point across. That's all I can figure, because she just goes on and on about the damn harassment. And I said before, I don't like it. I don't like any witness, even this one, being harassed. It's not right. Nobody should have to go through that. No witness, no person, whether in person or online. I'm not for it, but you made your point. So this was interesting. On Recross, they say April of 2023 is when the harassment started. That's when the whole House Long to Die in the Cold came out. And there was public outrage about the McAlberts' involvement in the case. And then in June, 2 months later, June of 2023, she testified at a hearing. I hit him 3 times for the first time. She had never said that until the harassment. After the harassment, she changed it to I hit him 3 times. Carrie Roberts' statement horrified her, but she responded in the group chat, I love it, about Carrie telling everything. And she says everything means that statement. So it horrified her, but she loves it. She says Karen knew he was there. She's, they had like a big fight. She was big mad. And she just keeps going on about how Karen was the one that said that we needed to go to Fairview because she knew he was there. She saw him from the car because she knew he was there. It was crazy. But then that was finally the end for her. Now there's 2 things I want to show you. This one, this is a timeline, and it's her calls and her text, which I think is really fascinating on the 29th. So at 12:14, she calls John, gives him directions. At 12:18, John calls to clarify because they can't find the house. At 12:23, Karen Reed arrives at 34 Fairview, allegedly. And then Ryan Nagel arrives at 34 Fairview. At 12:27, Jen sees the SUV and texts John, here. And that's when she notices the SUV because she's looking out the door. At 12:29, John received and answered a call. It lasted 8 seconds. She says it didn't happen. At 12:31, she texts John, pull behind me. That was when the SUV had moved. She's looking out the door again. At 12:40, she texts John, hello. She says the SUV had moved again, and she's looking out the door. 12:41 and 10 seconds, John misses a call from her, and it's deleted. 12:41 and 59 seconds, John misses a call from her, and it's deleted. At 12:42, she texts John, where are you? and she's looking out the door. At 12:43, John misses a call from her, and it's deleted. At 12:45, she texts John, hello. This is when the SUV drove away, and she's looking out the door. At 12:46, John missed a call from her, deleted. 12:47, he gets a call from her, deleted. 12:50, gets a call from her, deleted. And 1:30, the McCabes leave the Fairview residence. That's crazy when you look at it like that. The number of texts and calls, and it's a lot. It is a lot. Here is, that's not a very good one. Her searches, so you can see how she had typed it in. The 227 one was HOS long to die in cold. At 6:23, she tries to type it in, but comes up how long TI die in CIKD. She realizes, oh shit, I fucked that up. So at 6:24, she types in HOS long to die in cold, which matches her search from 227. The only reason to search twice was to correct her mistake. Okay, I want to show you, somebody had brought this to my attention and I had seen it and I thought I'd share it with you. Court TV actually went back to the scene and made some videos, which kind of give you perspective, because sometimes in the pictures, the yard looks really huge and it's not. So I'm going to show you the drive from Cedar Crest, which is the intersection where Ricky, Ryan, and Heather saw, well, Ricky didn't see it. Ryan and Heather saw the SUV at the intersection. And it's going to take you from there to the house. And that's the first one.
Would have been completely pitch black. Snowstorm, and an epic one early in the hours that morning. And
I slow
the
down.
windshield wipers
Slow
would
down.
have been on. Okay.
Slow down.
Here's the intersection, Vinny. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Beautiful. So now, are you on Fairview yet?
So this is that intersection, and I know you've been here. So this is Cedar Crest, and then this is Fairview. So just about a couple yards away, that's 34 Fairview. Let's take you over there. So
Okay,
this is
make that
the route
turn.
that Karen Reed took.
That's the intersection
Make
where
that
the
turn.
truck saw
And again,
the SUV.
It's light out, so it's nice we can see, but it's really about the field of vision as well as you're looking from the car. So what are you noticing as you're
Vinny,
approaching
we
the
are
house?
So we're approaching the house. It's at a grade of a curve. Here's 34 Fairview. I'm turned in front of the house right now, and this is actually in front of the mailbox. So this is the position of the house in front of the mailbox. You can see the two entry doors that are constantly being talked about by these witnesses on the stand. Down the road, it turns. So anyone that was approaching from that direction, they're not going to see the front yard that much. And remember, we just made that other turn. So this is in the center of two turns, and it goes up, down. It's about a hilly neighborhood. It is hilly. And so if you're driving through here in the dark and in the snow, you might not see much.
Let me do this. Stay where you are. Don't move. Have Austin show us the front again. I want the viewers to see out the front. The front windshield, not the side, but the front windshield where John O'Keefe's body would have been. So if someone is getting into a car or leaving, that looks pretty close to me. Yeah. How does it look to you? Like when you look straight ahead, how close does it look?
Yeah, these are huge houses as they appear on TV, but the yards are very small and it's a very dense neighborhood. You can see the flagpole is only about 7-8 feet away from where the street starts. There is no sidewalk. And you can see that from any direction that you're at in front of this house. I'm going to back up. There's no one behind me. I'm backing up to the neighbor's home. So if someone was approaching this house to pick somebody up, this is what they would be seeing as they're approaching the mailbox that we've heard about and the driveway where a lot of these witnesses were also parked. And still, you can see where John O'Keefe's body was in front of that flagpole from any direction over here.
Absolutely. Like, as you get up to that mailbox and pull up, it just seems there's not even much of a grade, is there? There's a slight going down grade on the side where his body was found, but my goodness, like I see the flagpole's very clear, the fire hydrant and the white, is that the box that they're talking about, that white thing sticking up in the middle there?
Exactly. That's the box that a lot of witnesses have described as something being weird, metal sticking out of the ground, because remember, this was all covered in thick snow. But from this vantage point, I mean, you can see neighbors' windows from over here. That's very interesting. There is a lot of people's homes across the street. It's a very dense neighborhood, but from this flagpole and where John O'Keefe's body was, I mean, look at how close it is to this yard. And also, that is the gate where the defense showed a video from the basement doors. They lift up, they're on the side of the house. You can walk through that gate and walk right over here to the flagpole.
Yeah, as I'm looking at this from the car, and I was there as well, but now after listening to all the testimony and all the people that didn't see anything, to me, I'm surprised. Like, obviously it's possible, but I'm just surprised because you would have a slight contrast if you had a dusting of snow and you had someone dressed in clothes. So can you do this now? Can you pull away slowly and see how quickly that disappears, go down the road just a little bit, and then I want you to make a turn when you can safely so we can sort of retrace Karen Reed's trip that morning with Jennifer McCabe and Kerry Robertson. So why don't we pull away slowly and tell me what you're seeing. We got to put those letters down, though. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm waiting for a car to pass, and then now we can go. So now we're approaching where you hear a lot of witnesses talking about the fire hydrant. So this is the property line, and Austin's going to show you from this direction the house, which is to his back. See, you can see a little bit of perspective right there. So now I'm going to continue to pull away. And now the road starts sloping. So the house was pretty much even grade. But now the road starts sloping. There's a dead end street.
Okay, so, I mean, it's so close. And, like, when you come out the front door, it's not that far. The yard's not that big. And when they were leaving that night, everybody says there was like a dusting. It was just starting to accumulate. So yeah, there was some snow on the ground, but it wouldn't have been enough to cover his body at that point. So it is kind of hard to think about every single person that drove by and didn't see anything. Now, the second video I'm going to show you from Court TV, he's going to go to that dead-end street and he's going to come back. This is the direction that Jen and Carrie and Karen came that morning when they found John. So I want you to take a look at that.
Sloping. So the house was pretty much even grade. But now the road starts sloping. There's a dead end street over here to my left. That's where we're going to turn around. And you can see that it's a windy neighborhood. So that could be an issue when we hear about the plow driver's testimony.
Exactly.
Which we're waiting to hear.
So now this is the approach the morning that the three women, including Karen Reed, who was in the back middle seat, make that approach. And here we are already. So the question is, what are you going to see as you approach the house and the flagpole and everything else that'll be coming up on the left-hand side? What are your thoughts about what you're seeing as you're driving?
So I'm noticing that it was a grade up. And I'm also noticing that you can't really see the house if those trees are right there. But again, it would have been in the winter time.
How about where John O'Keefe's body was? How about where his body was? Is that more difficult because of the curve, or is it easier?
You can see the flagpole as soon as you pass the curve on the street and you're approaching in this direction towards Cedar Crest. Clear as day, you can see it. But again, if the plow had been here before Karen Reed, Carrie Roberts, and Jen McCabe would have approached the house, maybe they couldn't see past the snow. The two women that were in the front seat, and Karen Reed, she starts, according to them in their testimony, she starts screaming and kicking in the back seat, saying, let me out, he's over here. And then she just runs over here and rips up his shirt, takes up her shirt, and lays on top of him. And then Carrie Roberts, her testimony, she wipes away the snow from his face, and then she says that it was grass underneath him.
So when they're there the next day,
here.
obviously much more snow. There'll be much more snow that following morning as they approach this area. But coming around that curve, to me, it's not quite as open and obvious as coming from the other direction.
Yes, because the other direction, you're coming from an uphill, slightly down, and it's more level and from home. And then the rest of the neighborhood goes downhill, and there are curves downhill. So there's twists and turns on both sides of where this home is located, the former Albert home, for many generations, we might add. But yeah, this is where we are.
This is fascinating. Now, there are no street lights anywhere, right? That you've seen?
I'm noticing there is a street light, yes. So there is a street light directly in front of 34 Fairview that Austin is showing you right there. But I'm not sure how much light it gives and if it was on that night. I mean, this was during a blizzard. There was a lot going on. But there is a light right in front of this house. And there's also a lot of lights at the home on their porch. They have porch lights. But again, I don't know if they would have been on that night.
They didn't come on until, well, we don't know if they were on that night, right? But the following morning, it took a while for them to come on. But I don't think they're going to illuminate that part at all because you're not in front of the house. You're sort of to the side. So, Matt, what's your final analysis taking this drive? And obviously, it's not dark. It's not snowing, which makes it, I guess, very different to a certain extent. But the road is the road. As you're driving, do you see that area as you drive, or if you're driving and you're looking, are you more focused on the road as you just did this drive?
I think that you would be more focused on the road if it was snowing because there are turns, and a lot of these people didn't know exactly where this house was. There's that part of it. But I can't get past the fact that where John O'Keefe lay dying on the front of the yard here, you can see it from every direction as you approach this house. You can definitely see it. And I mean, that's burned in my mind at this point.
Matt Johnson returning to the scene tonight.
So what do you think? I mean, you can see it, and she wasn't driving. I can see that, Carrie is driving, so she's focused on the road because she didn't know where she was going. Jen is maybe looking ahead. I don't know what Jen was doing. But if Karen was looking out the side window, could she possibly have seen what she says she saw? Now, I'm going to show you, this picture was taken that morning. Because you can see all the footprints and everything from where the first responders were at. So this is the amount of snow that was there that morning when they found him. And a few things that I have a problem with are, they said there was grass underneath him. But nowhere in this picture do I see any grass. Like after they moved him, I should be able to see the grass, and I don't. Because remember, they had to get the leaf blower to blow the snow to get to the blood drops and all that stuff. And he was missing like 3.5 liters of blood. We haven't got there yet in the trial, but that's what I've heard. Where the hell is all that blood? And it would have been on the grass or on the pavement. But they found the drops coagulated in the snow, and it was just enough to put in the solo cup, so it wasn't a lot of blood. But she said that it was grass underneath him. Like I said, I don't see that. If he wasn't out there when everybody left after the dusting, there wouldn't be grass. If he was put there later, even less chance of there being grass underneath him. But it was snowing when they arrived. It was starting to stick. They're driving up from what we just watched in court TV to this. And she says that she saw him and she was like, let me out of the car. I don't know. I just wanted to give you every possible thing I could for you to visualize in your mind what's being testified to. I didn't do what Jen saw with the cars because she was all over the place. I would have had to have made so many. Yeah, I just want to say I apologize for the little hiccup there at the end, those last few slides that I had to pull up at the last minute. I don't know what happened there. But we made it. Thunderstorm didn't knock out the power or anything like that. And we're through with her. So the next ones should go pretty quick. Brian Higgins might take a little bit, but it won't be as bad as Jen. I think hers so far has been the most. So thank you for spending part of your day with me here. Give this a like on your way out if you didn't give it a like on your way in. Share it. And if you're not subscribed, get subscribed. I would appreciate it. It helps the channel a lot. A like and a subscribe don't cost you a penny. So it's free. It helps. And I would so appreciate it. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.